full. That's good.
All right.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Back to live action. So here we are with your prize collection.
Yeah.
These beautiful, beautiful steam locomotives. I want to know a little bit about each one. So let's start with this Rainier over here. And the first question that I always ask people is, doesn't this thing look like a Shay?
Mm-hmm.
But
It looks like one.
Well, why? What's the difference and what makes them better?
So in the early 20s, Willamette Iron and Steel, the folks that built that yarder over there, they were known.
Portland, Oregon.
Yep, they were known for being kind of the go-to place on the West Coast to get your equipment rebuilt. But they also built some of the finer line of donkeys and that kind of thing. And so the Heislers, the Shays, the Climaxes, they were all built back east. So when you needed something heavily rebuilt and you didn't have the ability to do it in-house, you'd send it off to somebody to get rebuilt. And Willamette did a lot of them.
Because they were here and we were doing logging here,
Yep.
and these were logging locomotives.
Yep, they did a lot of them for especially Oregon and the southern part of Washington. They did a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so what they were doing is they were going, hey, there's no one on the West Coast that's building locomotives for this industry.
Okay.
So they said, we got the knowledge, we got the ability, let's do it. And they took notes the entire time that they were doing all this rebuilding, of what the customers liked, what engines did they like? Did they like the Heisler, the Climax, the Shay? They determined, okay, the Shay is the most popular. And then they waited for, in the mid-20s, there were certain patents on the Shay that had expired.
Okay.
And once those patents were gone,
Like gearing?
basically the whole design part of it.
Okay.
So once those patents were gone, they jumped in and they started building their locomotive, which is basically it's a Shay knockoff, but the way that they went about it, because they did their research and knew what their customers didn't like about the Shay,
okay.
they came in and said, okay, well, we're going to change a lot of things. So for example, the trucks.
Yeah, now we got a Shay up the street, but why, just show us here, why is this different?
If you look at the trucks, you'll see that the trucks on this are one-piece cast.
This is
This whole piece right here is cast,
Okay.
and it's
But
got
on a Shay,
very
it's
little
not.
fasteners. It's not. It's all riveted together and bolted and strapped together with pieces of iron, and mechanically, maintenance-wise, it's a bear to work on. For example, if you want to take a axle out to turn your wheel or put a new tire on
it, yeah.
on the Shay, you got to pretty much take the truck out from underneath, and to make it easy, you got to take the truck out from underneath it. You got to unbolt the truck from around it, and you got to roll the axle out. This, you don't have to do that. You undo this piece here.
Okay.
You undo the brake beam.
Yep.
You take the line shaft out.
This is the line shaft
Yep,
right here.
that's the line shaft. You take the line shaft bearings off this side of the engine, and you free up the other side, and the axle will just roll right out the back of the locomotive. So when it comes down to maintenance, that's a lot easier to do than, to take the locomotive out for, a week, 2 weeks, and do all that work.
And you could do that in a camp versus something with the Shay where you'd have to send it somewhere.
You might have to send it somewhere, or you could do it in the camp, but you're gonna be more involved.
You're going to have a lot more people involved, a lot more fiddling around, it's going to be down for longer.
You're gonna be down for longer.
Okay.
So, and it's the same thing with the engine. The engine's got a lot less moving parts. If you go up and look at the
Let's
engine,
come up and take a look here.
the engine too, they went about.
Okay, this is a steam engine. So what is the actual, tell me what the actual engine is here. When you call it an engine, what are you alluding to?
Where I'm alluding to this area right here.
Okay.
So what you got is you got your valve.
Thing?
Right here is your valve.
Okay.
On the inside is where your piston's at.
Okay.
And it drives this crankshaft, and that powers the line shaft down the whole side of the locomotive.
And so then this shaft powers that truck and powers these trucks.
Yep, it powers the entire. Every wheel on a geared locomotive is powered.
And this is a 3-truck Willamette. Am I seeing that? Am I doing my
Yep.
fingers and toes right?
Yep, it's a 3-truck. It's one of the bigger 3 trucks that were built.
And this was was the last one, wasn't
This was the very last one built. It's got a construction number 34, but there were only 33 of them manufactured. The 33rd locomotive got canceled halfway through assembly, and this one was already being built, so they just finished
the
it
numbering system the same and,
yep.
and finished it.
and finished it. And out the door it went, and then the Great Depression happened, and by the time we came out of the Great Depression, we were dieselizing, and we were looking for better ways of moving logs out of the woods, because to do it the way these guys were doing it back in the day was very, 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 very cost prohibitive. And especially after the Great Depression, where they really had to pinch their pennies to get through.
Right.
They started looking for more cost-effective ways on getting the logs out of the woods. The Peterbilt truck had been developed along with the Kenworth. The Peterbilt truck was actually developed right down here out of Morton.
I was going to say, yeah, and then the Kenworths were like Renton or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were able to, at that point, put the logs on trucks to get them to the railhead, and then the geared engines basically just kind of faded into the distance after that. In some cases, like with Pickering and other railroads, geared engines were used as the line engines, but in the case of like Rainier and a couple of the other big ones, they weren't. They were using rod engines and mallees and that kind of thing to get the logs from the woods out into the mill. And so at the end of the day, in the 1940s, you didn't need any geared engines anymore, so they quit building them. So they had a very short production run.
How did this thing manage to persevere and be here today?
So it was bought by J. Neal's Lumber Company to be their number 6. They were down in the Columbia Gorge.
Okay.
And they were getting out of the game and selling their equipment off, and Rainier was still clinging to using steam engines. And this was in the 40s when all this happened, so of course they were, okay, we can afford to keep going with steam locomotives, and it's kind of our way of doing things. So they purchased the engine and they moved it up to CQ near Port Angeles.
Right.
And it was one of their main locomotives for all the way up till the early 60s, when they decided that steam was no longer cost effective, and they surplused it and they sold it off to a scrapper. And a man named Jim Gertz, who worked for Rainier as one of their foresters, he really liked the engine and he didn't want to see it get scrapped, so he bought the locomotive from the scrapper and moved it to his house outside of Port Angeles and put it in his backyard, and they built a building around it. So there it sat from the 60s until we got it in the early 2000s.
And pulled it out and disassembled the building.
Yep, took the building apart.
And Joshua, our friend Dana Davis from Swim, was involved in helping get this thing down here in some form or fashion. So then this is a Willamette, Rowdy, and this is a Shay.
That's a Shay.
Now, the Shay is heavier, but it's less productive.
It's less productive than this. So
now
that's the Pacific Coast Shay.
A Pacific Coast Shay.
Yep.
Okay.
So what Shay was doing with that is...
Shay was a person, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ephraim Shay was a person.
Shay. Okay.
He's the person that came up with the design for the Shay locomotive.
Got it. Okay.
And so once his patents had worn off, that's when Willamette jumped in there.
Because that would have been like the early 1800s when Shay came up with his design.
Yeah, and back then patents only went for, 30 years or something like that?
Oh, that's right.
They didn't go as long as they do now. And because he was long dead at that point, he couldn't reapply.
No, he couldn't.
And Lima really didn't care, I don't think, because they thought they were the big bad, so they were just like, okay, whatever. These guys aren't going to get that much of the market. And then they started getting a lot of the market, and Lima woke up with, oh crap. So the Pacific Coast Shay, the West Coast Special Heisler, and then whatever Climax decided to do, they were all put out to compete with this locomotive.
Because this was the
most efficient
epitome of design
at that point,
for this particular mode of transportation.
Yeah, so what this thing does is this thing weighs about 78, 79 tons. It's
weighs
almost 100.
So this is 20% lighter.
Yep.
Okay.
But it can do 33% more.
and it could do more.
Yep.
And so it could haul more cars.
It can haul more cars
up a steeper hill.
up the same gradient.
Oh, okay.
It can haul more cars up the same gradient on less fuel and water. And so that made it to the bean counters and the smaller companies. That made it the go-to locomotive design because they were going, oh, we can move more product on less. Sure. And so that's when the Pacific Coast Shay came out, was to try to compete with that. So what they did is they just made the engine bigger.
Lima built the Pacific Coast Shay.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. So what they did is they just basically said, well, to be able to combat with that, we're going to just make it bigger. And so they got a almost 100-ton locomotive there to do the same thing as what this thing can do. So that's really at the end of it, when you're coming into especially like the Depression years, the more you can get to the mill, it's the way it is in business everywhere. Sure. The more you can get on less money, the better off you are. And that's what this thing did, because it's got less moving parts. Maintenance-wise, it's easier. Every single person that's come through this organization and tried to take care of this locomotive saying, well, it's just a Shay, has fallen flat on their face taking care of it, because it's not just a Shay.
Now it is a Willamette, and when we talk about people that understand Willamette locomotives, aren't I right now talking to the world's expert?
I would say the world's expert. I'd say there's 3 of us that have really dug into this.
Because you've actually
rebuilt it.
You took it, yeah.
I've had this engine.
Tinker toy.
Yep. I've had this engine completely and tore apart down to its frame, in the engine set as well, and the whole shebang. What are they doing? The diesel just fired up.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Why don't you go find out? Yeah, I've had this engine completely and totally tore down to its frame. Ended up losing a wife because of it. And
in the boiler or what?
no, I spent more time working on this than hanging out with her. So she's like, I want to go find somebody else. You can have your damn train.
Oh, okay.
As a young man fresh out of high school.
Yeah, I get that.
But as far as it goes, Brian Wise, myself, and a couple of other people they've delved into the machine and actually tried to learn the machine instead of just saying, well, it's a Shay, so I'm going to apply the practices to that. When it came to timing the engine.
And now, when you time this, first, what is timing on this, and how do you do it?
So what timing is your timing, there's a valve inside here.
Okay.
And this has got a piston valve in it, so it's about that big around. And it moves up and down, and it opens certain chambers for intake and exhaust, for the most part. And you have to time its movement in relation to the piston.
So on a rod locomotive, we have those cylinders down there when we were looking at the 5, and we time those. So this is the equivalent of that rod locomotive, but it's now in a geared setting.
It's now in a geared setting.
Okay.
And what this thing has got going on it is that, again, we go back to Willamette's selling point is that they were selling it on ease of maintenance.
And durability.
And durability.
And
productivity and efficiency. So with the Shay down there, for example, it's got piston valves on it, but it's got straight Stevenson link valve gear.
This is a combination?
This is a combination.
Of?
Stevenson link and Walsharts.
Oh.
So with Walsharts, like the Climax has got Walsharts down there.
We'll look at that in a minute.
Yeah, you got your link that's swinging around and it's running the rods and the monkey motion's going to drive that valve. To time that.
Yes. And why do you need to time it?
You need to time it so you get your most efficiency out of the piston in its stroke.
Okay.
So that
each time it expands and contracts, you're maximizing.
You're maximizing it, but you also want to make sure that the valve is opening the exhaust port and the intake port at the right time, because if it's off by a little bit, the piston can start to fight itself.
Wouldn't that be like the timing in your car?
Yep.
With the intake and exhaust valves and the cylinder?
Yep. So you want your valve to be opening just as the piston's coming to the end of its stroke to give it a cushion of steam to come up against, and then it starts to push it back. And you want to make sure that all that is in perfect square all the time.
So to do it here,
to do it here, on a normal Walsharts piston valve situation, you have to take the valve out and add shims to each one side of it or the other to move that valve in relation to the piston going up and down.
Okay.
On Stevenson Link, you don't have to do that because you have a forward blade and you have a reverse blade, and you just move those blades and it moves the valve up and down inside there.
And those are up in here?
Yep, that's the, well, that, no, the blades would be down here.
Okay.
And so you'd be moving those to make the valve move up and down in relation to where you do it. So you take these ports out,
Okay.
and you look inside there and you find, as the engine's slowly spinning over, you find where your vents are starting to open.
Okay.
And you put a scribe right here on the valve rod. You do it for reverse, and you put another scribe. So you'd end up with a scribe here and a scribe here. And then you run the engine around, and you have a tram set up, and you mark it where it quits moving and starts going the other direction. And then you take a measuring tool and you measure from here to where the end of your mark is. And you run your numbers on that, and it'll tell you just how far away it is from being square, and then you make your adjustment, you run your event again.
Okay, which is to run through the cylinder cycle.
Yep, you run through the cylinder cycle.
Is an event.
Yep,
Okay,
that's the
got it.
event.
Okay.
And then you just basically move everything around in there until you sit back and say, yep, I really like that. So in our case, what you'd start off with is like a number like 250.
Okay.
And what you want is you want that number to get smaller and get as close to 0 as you can for both forward and reverse. So you're not going to get a perfect 0 90% of the time if you're trying to have forward and reverse time for maximum efficiency. But you want to get them as close as possible, and then you're square. So if you're off by 15 thousandths, it's not going to kill you. If you're off by a quarter of an inch, it's going to kill you.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I understand the range.
Yep.
Okay,
So
helps.
now.
Yes.
In this situation, you don't have to take the valve out to make that adjustment. On a normal piston valve type situation, you have to undo this, run the valve out, take the valve off its spool and its stem, and move it around with shims.
Okay.
This here is predetermined by Willamette where it needs to be.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to take the heads off. You do not have to take the engine apart to time it. All you have to do is move the blade here for forward, and then back here, there's a turnbuckle that you move for reverse.
Okay.
So you run your events, and you set it all up, and you can time the locomotive in a matter of a few hours versus a day or 2 days. Because you got to do that for each one of these. Each one of these is a separate engine.
And each one of those has to be, and then do you have to harmonize the timing between the three of them?
Yep, you do.
Okay, now, and how do you do that?
It's pretty much predetermined by the crankshaft.
Oh, okay.
They're pre-timed by the crankshaft from the factory to kind of give you an idea where they're at. But as long as they are running square, they're pretty much harmonized. So, but yeah, to do it on a Willamette it took us when Bethan first showed up.
Yeah.
John Slack and I had this thing taken apart at the line shaft, and we were timing it, and it took us 3 months to reverse engineer it to figure out this is how you time it.
Oh.
Because every time we tried to use a standard practice,
Like
it would
a Shay practice.
just a standard practice for timing valves, period.
Oh, okay.
You would wind up with things just not quite being right, where something was fighting itself somewhere within it. So we sat back, and as John would say, like, there is somebody dead from Willamette up in heaven right now looking down at me laughing because I'm trying to figure this out.
Because they're going, you guys, you just need to do this.
Yeah.
And then you'd have it.
Yep,
But
and so
you figured out what this was then.
yeah, we had to reverse engineer it. We have probably 9 legal pads completely full, front and back pages of notes from reverse engineering this locomotive. And once we went through that, because John, for example, he helped build the world's fastest piston-powered airplane.
Oh.
He's big into World War II warbirds.
Yeah.
The guy is just a natural mechanical engineer. He knew nothing about trains, but he knew mechanics.
Okay.
And how to hot rod something.
Okay.
And we sat down, we reverse engineered this entire locomotive, and we're like, okay, this is how it works. And you cannot approach it with the mentality of, well, it's just a Shay. Because if you come at it with, it's just a Shay or standard practice, what standard practice is within our industry for certain mechanical parts of it, you'll be able to make it work, but it's not going to run perfect.
And this thing ran, as I recall, I watched this thing run in like 2012.
Yeah.
And she runs like a watch.
It runs like a watch, and then we retimed it since then.
Okay.
Because there were some things going on, and we got it close, but because we were trying to get it done for Jim Gertz when he passed and run his ashes through it, we got it close, but we didn't get it perfect.
Now, where is Jim Gertz right now?
He's inside the boiler.
How did he end up in there?
Well, we were running his ashes through, and we weren't dragging a train, and we were trying to do it on the brakes, and we didn't have enough draft, and so we started to put him in, and the first couple of chuffs he ended up inside the cab, and then the rest of them ended up inside the firebox, his ashes, that is.
Yes.
And
Not Jim himself.
Not Jim himself, the ashes,
Yes.
and the engine just didn't quite get him all the way to the stack. So there's a pretty good sized pile of Jim's ashes right underneath the tube sheet, and being as this locomotive's up on its tube time, business case wise, it doesn't make much sense to bring it back out and do a full 1472 on it. Jim will get his dream of he gets to spend eternity with his engine.
Okay.
So he's enshrined inside there, and this is kind of his headstone at this point.
Great. Okay, let's pause.